They say that entire wars can be won or lost in the shadows, long before the first tank rolls or the first plane takes flight. During World War II, beneath the roar of artillery and the thunder of marching armies, there was another battlefield, quieter yet just as lethal. Files recently released, along with persistent rumors, suggest that countless maneuvers and accidents were anything but random. From code-breaking strongholds hidden in the British countryside to covert networks weaving through Europe's underbelly, a silent army of spies and saboteurs was pulling strings, unraveling enemy plans, and sometimes rewriting the course of history. And even after all these decades, new evidence emerges that continues to rewrite what we thought we knew. Before bombs fell on cities and nations officially declared war, brilliant minds on both sides were already racing to crack each other's secrets. At the heart of this effort was one simple yet colossal objective: understand enemy signals and, in doing so, foresee their next moves. German forces relied heavily on the Enigma machine, a device that encrypted messages into strings of seemingly nonsensical letters. The Wehrmacht considered it unbreakable, confident that even the most advanced cryptanalysts couldn't decipher its daily changing keys. But in secret locations like Bletchley Park, British teams painstakingly worked to breach those coded walls. Some of these operations were publicly acknowledged only decades later. What remains controversial is the question of how much was actually revealed, and how early the Allies started reading German transmissions. Persistent claims hint that the Allies may have cracked certain Enigma modes long before they officially admitted it, altering strategic decisions in ways that were never documented. Meanwhile, the Axis had its own cryptographic experts, determined to decode Allied messages. Japanese codebreakers made considerable progress on certain Allied naval ciphers, while Italian cryptanalysts boasted their own small breakthroughs. Though often overshadowed by Enigma's fame, these lesser-known efforts sometimes handed the Axis short-lived advantages in the Mediterranean and beyond. By the time the United States joined the war, the race had expanded across the Atlantic, with Americans establishing new code-breaking hubs in Washington, D.C. and Hawaii. As each side vied for a breakthrough, the secrecy became a weapon in itself. Every success had to be concealed, lest the enemy realize their codes were compromised. This cloak-and-dagger chess match set the stage for a deeper level of infiltration, where double agents stepped onto the battlefield without ever picking up a gun. Even the best code-breaking operation needed human intelligence, someone on the inside who could confirm or deny the meaning behind cryptic messages. That's where double agents came in. Many names have surfaced over the years, but some of the most daring stories remain shrouded in mystery, possibly still buried in classified archives. One widely known example is Juan Pujol Garcia, codenamed Garabo, who famously fed disinformation to the Germans on behalf of the British. He convinced Nazi intelligence that he was running a large network of sub-agents across the United Kingdom, while in reality, these helpers were all fictitious. The deception paid huge dividends during the Normandy invasion, misleading the German high command and buying the Allies critical time on the beaches. But Garbo was just one agent. Newly declassified files in recent years suggest there may have been more infiltrators slipping through Allied lines than previously reported. Rumors persist about a small cluster of German sympathizers who allegedly reached key positions in British or American intelligence cells. Could they have relayed valuable Allied plans back to Berlin? Hard evidence is scarce, but the idea alone stirs debates among historians. The bigger question is how many Allied operations, some of which failed dramatically, were actually sabotaged from the inside. This era proved that a single person, armed only with coded messages and stolen documents, could shape entire battles. Yet infiltration didn't stop at paperwork. In the next phase, saboteurs brought war to the enemy's doorstep, targeting factories, railways, and vital supply lines, often in operations so secret they were never officially acknowledged. While codebreakers quietly deciphered messages, saboteurs unleashed tangible havoc. British Special Operations Executive, SOE, famously urged their recruits to set Europe ablaze, arming and training local resistance networks to hamper Nazi operations from within. They blasted bridges, crippled transport lines, and even orchestrated targeted assassinations. Each success forced the Axis to divert manpower and resources away from frontline combat, spreading their efforts dangerously thin. One lesser-known mission was Operation Pastorius, initiated by German intelligence in 1942. A small group of saboteurs landed on American shores by submarine, intending to strike critical industrial targets. FBI records later revealed many details of this infiltration, but controversies linger about additional sabotage cells that might have slipped through undetected. Did more sabotage attempts occur than the public ever learned? The rumors persist, implying that American security agencies scrambled to downplay further infiltration attempts to prevent mass panic. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union faced its own infiltration challenges. Germany deployed Brandenburger Commandos, well-trained units specializing in wearing enemy uniforms or operating deep behind enemy lines. Soviet stay-behind groups also embedded themselves in Nazi-occupied territories, launching guerrilla strikes that crippled German supply lines. Each sabotage act created chaos, uncertainty, and fear, but also triggered brutal reprisals. Civilians often paid the highest price, caught in the crossfire when occupation forces retaliated for strikes launched from nearby forests or small towns. It wasn't just rail lines and factories at stake. Wiping out morale sometimes proved more damaging than destroying any single bridge. This psychological front soon evolved into a sophisticated propaganda war, turning newspapers, flyers, and rumor-mongering into powerful weapons. While sabotage rattled the enemy's physical infrastructure, psychological warfare aimed to undermine their minds and convictions. Propaganda was everywhere. Leaflets fluttered down from the sky, radio broadcasts beamed across borders, and loudspeakers near battle lines blared demoralizing messages in enemy languages. On the Eastern Front, both Nazi and Soviet forces spread horrifying tales of atrocities committed by the other side, sometimes exaggerated or outright fabricated to stir fury and fear. One rumor claims that certain Allied leaflets dropped over German lines hinted at secret Allied superweapons about to be unleashed, pushing some units to retreat preemptively. Another rumor conversely suggests the Axis planted stories of unstoppable Nazi vengeance weapons that would soon strike London. Though modern historians debate whether these threats had any real effect, it's undeniable that both sides used fear to sway morale. Disinformation extended far beyond leaflets, however. British intelligence famously ran Operation Mincemeat, planting false plans on a corpse disguised as a British officer to mislead Nazi command about the Allies' next move in the Mediterranean. German high command took the bait, redirecting troops and ships to the wrong location. Similar operations were run by the Soviets, feeding false data to Nazi intelligence about troop movements, supply stockpiles, or the existence of phantom divisions. These illusions constantly forced the enemy to second-guess every scrap of intelligence. Such strategies weren't just aimed at top military brass. They targeted everyday soldiers and civilians, sowing doubt that their leaders could protect them. Yet behind every cleverly planted story, there were real people living double lives, risking everything to manipulate the narrative. In that risky environment, morality often blurred, leaving many operatives haunted by the cost of their secrets. For every triumphant story of sabotage or successful misinformation, there was someone on the ground forced to make unthinkable choices. Spies living undercover often formed close ties with people they'd eventually betray. Individuals who seemed ordinary, shopkeepers, teachers, or clerks, found themselves blackmailed or coerced into gathering secrets. In other cases, devoted patriots volunteered their services only to discover that victory demanded a piece of their humanity. The pressure to constantly switch allegiances or double-cross allies took a personal toll. Some diaries and memoirs, only recently unsealed, depict the psychological torment faced by agents who felt torn between loyalty to a cause and the bonds they formed with the very people they were deceiving. In occupied nations, entire families were sometimes cast under suspicion if a relative was known to assist a spy cell. Innocent citizens vanished under accusations surfaced by local collaborators. In these moral grey zones, friend and foe became virtually indistinguishable, and the line between heroic resistance and brutal betrayal blurred beyond recognition. One particularly chilling example involves a secret operative who served both the German Abwehr and British MI6, feeding partial truths to each side while funneling weapons to local partisans. When the war ended, all sides labeled him a traitor. Records suggest he tried to vanish, changing his identity multiple times. Some speculate he ended up in South America under yet another alias. That single story reflects countless untold tales of men and women who, after risking their lives for clandestine operations, disappeared into anonymity, burdened by guilt or fear of retribution. These fractured loyalties and uneasy alliances also laid the groundwork for the massive intelligence apparatus that would shape the post-war world. What started as emergency measures became permanent structures in many countries, spawning new controversies that extended well beyond 1945. As the war drew to a close, intelligence networks that had honed their craft against Nazi Germany or Imperial Japan pivoted seamlessly into Cold War rivalries. The British MI6, American OSS turned CIA, and the Soviet NKVD, later the KGB, all borrowed tactics perfected during World War II espionage. Code-breaking technologies advanced rapidly, encryption methods grew more complex, and newly founded counterintelligence units hunted for any remaining double agents. Some of these transitions were surprisingly abrupt. Documents revealed that certain Nazi intelligence specialists, deemed useful by Allied forces, were shielded from prosecution in exchange for their expertise on Soviet operations. Meanwhile, the Soviets scooped up German scientists for their own rocket and weapons programs. The espionage lines from World War II quickly blurred into Cold War intelligence efforts, with many old networks continuing to operate in secret. Recent claims suggest the United States and the Soviet Union each raced to recruit top codebreakers from the vanquished regimes, turning them into prized assets. Germany's advanced knowledge in rocketry and cryptography suddenly became a trophy for whichever side could claim it first. While the official story often portrays these recruitment drives as part of a broader scientific diaspora, some now argue these activities were a direct extension of clandestine WW2's efforts, with entire espionage rings shifting their loyalty for survival. The war's spycraft had lit the fuse for half a century of global intelligence battles, yet countless stories remain locked away in classified archives. Whenever new files come to light, they often reveal shocking details. Entire missions that never made headlines, or hints that certain high-profile Allied leaders were regularly fed disinformation by cunning German or Soviet moles. The deeper one digs, the clearer it becomes that the full story of World War II espionage may never be completely uncovered. Looking back, it's remarkable how a hidden battlefield so profoundly shaped one of the most destructive conflicts in human history. Bombs and bullets still captured the world's attention, but time and again, it was a quietly deciphered code or a well-placed saboteur that made the difference between victory and defeat. Files declassified in recent years confirm that entire battles hinged on small covert acts by individuals whose names we might never know. And if these newly revealed hints are anything to go by, there's still more to be discovered. How many conspiracies and hidden alliances were never exposed? Which rumored infiltration plots were genuine and which were mere propaganda? Each revelation sparks fresh debate. Even as time marches on, the ghosts of these old operations linger, reminding us that history is rarely as simple as the official accounts suggest. In a war defined by massive tank armies and global alliances, it was the silent hand of espionage that often delivered the decisive push. That legacy lives on, not just in the sprawling intelligence agencies that arose from World War II, but in the questions we still ask about unseen forces steering world events. Perhaps the real lesson is that great power can hide in unexpected places. A coded telegram, an unassuming undercover agent, or a rumor set loose at just the right moment. Who knows what revelations might surface next, ready to upend our view of the war that changed the world forever.